Good evening, thanks for showing up. We'll call the Manchester Community Schools monthly board meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Dr. Grimaud will not be joining us tonight. She's under the weather. Take a roll call. Mr. Booker?
I am here.
Mr. Brubaker?
Here.
Mr. Espacet is absent. Mr. Shaw?
Here.
Mr. Hensley?
Here.
Dave Turflinger's here, and Brian Raymer is also absent. Do any board members or Jeremy have any additions to the agenda?
No additions or deletions on our end.
This time I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Mr. Brubaker, Mr. Hensley, second. All in favor, signify. This time we'll do hearing of patrons. Okay, no hearing of patrons. We have a presentation on the Early Award Scholarship Program. Patty Grant. Put the mic down.
All right, good. Thank you. Thanks very much for allowing us to present this evening. It's been a while since we've been back at Manchester Community Schools to talk about the Early Award Scholarship Program. I think the last time I was here was to talk about population decline. And actually, we think this is a pretty good program to help recruit students to Wabash County. I would be curious, so I don't go into too much unnecessary detail, how many of you feel like you really know a lot about the program? Yeah, pretty much? Oh, good. Well, we'll start. Go ahead. The Early Award Scholarship Program is built around the theory of CSAs. There's about 800,000 kids in the United States that have CSAs. That's Children's Savings Account. And the principles and theory behind it are pretty simple. Those who study CSAs believe that children's savings accounts change how children think about the future. That when a child knows they have a college fund or they have money for post-secondary education, it changes the way they see their future and potentially the expectations they have and the engagement that they have in school. So easy enough, CSAs are long-term savings accounts. They're usually restricted only for post-secondary education. They're invested either in a bank account or an investment account like a 529 in Indiana. They grow, and then when the student graduates from high school, they can withdraw the money that's in the 529 tax-free. It's earned income that is also tax-free, but it is restricted then to be used only for post-secondary education. All the states have some sort of 529 or savings account plan for children. However, Indiana has the most impressive in terms of tax benefits. You can get a 20% tax credit. That's not a tax deduction. It's a 20% tax credit on the money that you put into your child's savings accounts. You can have as many 529s as you want, and the 529 beneficiary can be transferred. So if you set one up for one of your children and they end up not going on, the beneficiary can be renamed to your next child. Go ahead, sorry. In Wabash County, we want to give credit to the YMCA, who in 2013 invented the Wabash County Promise. Their goal was to sign up every K through third grader in Wabash County with the Indiana College Choice 529 account called a Promise account. What kind of impact do CSAs have? Pretty impressive. We know from studies, particularly in the state of Oklahoma, that college savings accounts of less than $500. For children that have those, they're 3 times more likely to attend college, and they're 4 times more likely to graduate from college. What is the power? What do we know from research? By the way, I want to add that CSAs can be privately funded. In the state of Maine, perhaps you all have owned a pair of Docker shoes. In the state of Maine, Harold Alfond founded Docker shoes. As he began to have grandchildren, he gave each of them $500 in a savings account for them to be able to go to college. And in his later years, as he retired, he realized that from his largesse, he could give every child born in the state of Maine $500. That's an example of a CSA that is privately funded from an individual's wealth. There's also CSAs that are funded by foundations, some that are funded by tax dollars from cities like San Francisco or states like Oklahoma. But what do we know from research? The lead researcher on CSAs is Dr. William Elliott at the University of Michigan. He's actually studying our early award scholarship program. But the scholars are telling us that when children who have CSAs have improved social emotional development skills that are needed to succeed in school. Further, they know that CSAs increase parental expectations. When parents know their children have money to go to college, the expectation in the home to pursue education and to do well in school increases. And by virtue of the parents' expectations improving and increasing, we also can contribute to a child's expectation. One of the most impressive findings also from Oklahoma was that CSAs mitigate about 50% of the negative association of material hardship with a child's social emotional development. And given the amount of poverty in Wabash County, the number of kids on free and reduced lunch, we find this statistic very important, that we're giving our kids assets early. Early award scholarships, I mentioned Dr. William Elliott at the University of Michigan has been studying our program. By the way, we appreciate and we're very grateful that you allowed us to survey the students in your schools so that we could get an impression of how the CSAs were impacting our local students. But preliminary findings are telling us that children that have early award scholarship funds in Wabash County are performing better on standardized tests in math and reading. We know that families whose children have a children's savings account and an early award scholarship fund are also saving and saving more frequently. We know that when parents get their fund statements, they talk to their kids more regularly about their future plans. One of the findings about parental involvement, which we all know, parent involvement improves outcomes for children, and that missing ingredient important ingredient in parent involvement is that involved parents talk to their kids about their future. And having a children's savings account and an early award scholarship, it provides that platform for that discussion. And lastly, I mentioned that largely assets improve social emotional development. That original finding was from Oklahoma, but it also has been confirmed here in the Wabash County Early Award Scholarship Program. I just want to say a note about our traditional scholarships. The Community Foundation has about $8 million in traditional scholarships, which we're very pleased to administer. We give away about $300,000 in scholarships every year. They're great. We appreciate them. Their donors have been very generous. Typically, they remember someone who has passed on. But we also know that we also believe that early is better. Early award scholarships can provide for those same students that we're awarding in a traditional format the benefits of a CSA early. And that is to contribute to their identity. I'm a college-going student because I have a college fund. An early scholarship can incentivize learning, perhaps where a traditional scholarship is too much later into school. And lastly, we believe that the early award scholarships are having a little better success in meeting low and middle income kids who may not be in the applicant pool when they get ready to graduate. What do you need to participate in the Early Award Scholarship Program? You have to have an Indiana College Choice 529 account that's linked to the Promise in Indiana, Promise, the Wabash County Promise, and you have to have a Early Award Scholarship Fund established at the Community Foundation, which requires parents to complete a participation form. The participation form, we ask that parents authorize you and your teachers to share a binary answer. Did the student do the work or didn't they? Did they complete their assignments or didn't they, so that we could award the scholarship. And Joanne's going to tell you more about that.
Joanne Case, I'm the program officer, and so I'm one who's in schools and in contact with parents and students about the program. I like this graphic that we used with our enrollment campaign this year, because I feel it sends the message, I hope it sends the message that these early scholarships, they're not just for people of a certain income, low or high, they're not for straight A students only. The culture we're trying to build in Wabash County is that everybody thinks about their future. We're all doing it. It's just part of, in Manchester's case, part of being a squire. So in 2016, the Community Foundation gathered educators from Manchester and from the other schools in the county, administrators, teachers, and said, if we could give you $200 to incentivize your students, how would you use it? What tasks would you attach that money to? And the result of that discussion, that brainstorming, is the Early Award Scholarship Program. And overwhelmingly, the teachers just wanted the students to do the things they're asking them to do anyway, do their math and their reading and their language arts. That's how to prepare for the future. So scholarships are attached to just 100% completion at a 70% proficiency level. Not straight A's necessarily, just getting the work done. There are also scholarships attached to career exploration and college and technical school exploration, as well as a savings component, which is optional. We know not everybody can save, but every child can earn scholarships for doing their work, which makes this program an equitable choice. So the students earn these scholarships, and the teachers report to the Community Foundation each quarter whether that work is being completed, so we know which scholarships to award to which kids. And we deposit those funds, we inform the students and their families of their accomplishments, and then after students graduate, they're able to request disbursement from their early scholarship funds. So just a little bit more on each one of those steps. I want to recognize our teachers who support the program. These are just a few of the teachers. We have a team lead in each grade, and they enroll students, they help students and families connect today's work with the future, and they report to us the achievements of the students. And the program just simply could not exist without the teachers. Here's an example of a progress report. It's in your packet. And this is what students receive each quarter. There's a line for each scholarship and a column for each quarter, so they can easily see what they're earning, just a bit at a time, constant reinforcement of what they're earning. It would be a lot easier just to deposit that money and be done with it, but students would not receive the proven benefits of owning assets if they don't know they have them. Here's a fund statement that families receive each quarter. In the mail, it's also online now, showing recent deposits, market activity, and a current balance. Again, these funds are charitable funds, they're scholarships, separate from any family savings that the family may own in their 529 account. Again, to keep scholarships front of mind for students, we have recognition events such as the basketball halftime event that we hold each year. This year with COVID, we couldn't do that, and so we flooded the schools with candy bars, and you all got one on your desk because we had some leftovers. Just to, again, remind the students, keep working. Your work today paves the way for the future, no matter what you end up deciding to do. You may have seen a Scholar of the Quarter feature in the newspaper as well. Finally, when students graduate, they enroll in an institution, an accredited school that accepts federal aid. So that could be Ivy Tech, that could be any number of colleges or schools. They bring us their tuition bill, and then we pay out of their individual fund directly to the school where they are enrolled. And they hopefully have some savings in their 529 account. 529 funds can also pay for tuition and room and board, and even dual enrollment courses if students are involved in that in high school. How is Manchester participating? Here's, you can see a line for each grade, the number of students enrolled in early award scholarships at each grade level, and that number expressed as a percentage, and then a comparison with Wabash County schools as a whole. And these slides are in your packet as well for reference. You might wonder how much money we're talking about so far after 5 years. Grades 4 through 8 currently, there's low and high and an average. Our 8th graders have had the fullest experience with the program. They've had 5 full years, and as you can see, our highest balance is close to $1,000. And there are figures for all of Wabash County 8th grade only. So thank you for your support and the creation of this program. What else can be done? Always more integration into the school, making early awards just part of what we do here at Manchester. We appreciate, for the first time, being involved in online registration this summer. We think that will help students, families enroll in a convenient way. Meetings and events we're happy to come to. We appreciate that forum. We appreciate when schools share information through channels, newsletter, website, Mr. Self putting up social media items that I send him, and including a progress report on students' early award scholarships right there in the parent-teacher conferences. Time is precious, but just having that piece of paper as an expression of hope in the student to the parent is powerful. You can encourage teachers to discuss funds with the students, and there's a program, College Savings Account program in Michigan, who is looking into adding a link to a family's 529 account at Power Schools, so a family could check on their 529 account activity on the same platform that they use for checking on their school business. And finally, make sure your own children, or the children in your life, are enrolled in the program. And lastly, there's another item. Consider adopting a program called Pathways to Success. It's a 12-session whole class intervention to help 7th and 8th grade students navigate the risky transition to high school. We think it's a powerful complement to the Early Award Scholarship Program. It's the theory that underlies that whole, prepare now for the future. Created by a social psychologist at USC, and those sessions really efficiently change a student's identity-based motivation by making the future self feel connected to the present, make relevant strategies feel like something they can do now, and it reframes difficult things as important, not impossible. Unlike a lot of ideas and programs that might be out in education today and hunches, and we promote this because it has gone through rigorous, well-documented randomized control testing and is shown to have a significant impact on student self-regulatory behaviors, GPA, retention, remarkably even years after the intervention. Wabash City Schools is part of a randomized control study. We appreciate that Manchester invested in training in Chicago 2 years ago and has implemented two years, and we hope you'll consider taking that up again soon. And parting thought I want to leave with you is that those students who are not signed up for the Early Award Scholarship Program are literally leaving money on the table. You're not leaving the money for someone else to use, it's just you're leaving it behind. You're not benefiting somebody by, you know, thinking you're sharing so others can have more. You're just leaving money on the table. So, as well as leaving the opportunity for students to be influenced and for families to raise their expectations. So we look forward to continuing to do all we can to enroll as many of our precious Manchester students as possible and see where they take it in the future. I'd like to thank those, in addition to the school, Manchester School, other schools in the county, and our partners to make this possible. Anything you want to add? Okay. Thank you for allowing us to come tonight.
I have a question. And this one here, if a student has earned all this money and elects not to go, is the beneficiary transferable like with the 529 plan?
I hear that question a lot. It's a great question. The 529 money, it belongs to the student, no question. The scholarship fund, it's charitable money. It's like a scholarship that you might earn as a senior, and really you've earned that, and so you're not able to transfer it to a sibling or another person, but that money, if it's not claimed by age 26, it's a while to think about it and figure out if you want to take a class, if you need to upgrade in your job maybe. If not used, it returns to the pot, so to speak, for other students to earn. Yeah.
Any other board members have questions?
Well, just a couple comments. Number one, I think anytime you can have a program like this and get kids invested in ownership of their future is a good deal. The other thing we may look at to increase enrollment is we've had discussions on literacy, right? More than written and verbal financial literacy. And I think getting, again, like programs like this, teaching them what savings mean, compound interest, maybe there's some, some synergy in the future with what we do with that. And then the third thing is just thanking you guys, because a lot of times these programs, great organization, because, it's about the community and helping these kids, and we really need that secondary. But a lot of times I don't think people understand the administrative load of some of these programs. When the community foundation and their staff, and I kind of know, what you go through, keeping track of this stuff, the reporting, like you said. That'd be easy just to say, yeah, but you're putting investment into it and reporting. So instead of you thanking us, I'd like to thank you both and the community foundation, all the people that work on this. So.
Thank you very much. And as you have other ideas, we'd love to hear them. So our contact information is in that folder. I like the financial literacy, we've done some talking about that. Maybe we can talk further about it, but that's a great suggestion. And the brain power in this room can I think do a lot to add our depth to the program, the ideas that you have. So thank you.
Any other board comments, questions?
Thank you.
I'm going to do something here I don't normally do. These great people are here. Does anybody in the audience have any questions you'd like answered after this presentation? Okay, thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate it and everything you do.
Got it. I was digging it.
I like it.
Well, that leads us right into Mr. Markham in recognition.
Okay, tonight we'd like to start off with our first recognition of Becky Landis and the MCS food staff for what we're going to describe here. We'd like to honor our food service department this evening for being recognized on a national level for their outstanding work. Becky, before we begin, if you could please come up and introduce any of your hard-working staff that you may have here. If they would all stand as well. Any food service members, please stand.
This is a team effort, and it's a team effort tonight, guys. So, actually I have about 50% of the kitchen staff that you see here. And so let's see, I won't embarrass you all and make you tell. Yeah, I will. Just start at that end and say who you are and what school you work in, and maybe what your position is if you would.
I'm Carol Miller. I'm at Manchester Elementary School, and I'm the head cook. Rhonda Hernandez, Manchester High School.
Peggy Selleck,
Manchester High School.
Debbie Gish, Manchester High School.
Yolanda Burnett, MES. Trina Zimmer, MIS.
Jeff Coe, MES.
Janelle Walters, MES.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to do a round of applause because it's truly. I know my name's on it, they have to address it to somebody, but honestly, I have the crazy ideas, they're the ones that make it work.
I'm going to go ahead and continue here. We still have a little more information to provide. Cindy Lane from the United States Department of Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Service stated in her letter to Becky Landis, "Thank you for your extraordinary commitment and hard work in planning, preparing, serving, and distributing safe and nutritious meals while setting students up for success. Your community school nutrition story was shared recently with the USDA and the FNS by your state agency as an exemplary representation of how local program operations were empowered to ensure that no child goes hungry during the pandemic. On behalf of the Food Nutrition Service, we would like to extend a sincere appreciation for your hard work and heartfelt thanks for going above and beyond to ensure our nation's children continue to receive safe and nourishing meals. You are a true school nutrition hero. We are grateful for your perseverance, ingenuity, creativity, and immense dedication to the mission of child nutrition programs. Congratulations to Becky Landis and the MCS Food Service team for being one of 4 Indiana food service teams and directors that were recognized for their extraordinary efforts during the pandemic. Although this was no easy task, Becky and her team stood out as heroes for going above and beyond for our students. MCS is so proud of all our food service workers. Thank you again for your outstanding service to our school community. So once again, thank you very much. Our second recognition, Shelley Leifer, if you would please stand.
Okay, I have about 25 kids in work-based learning, and they're all at the track meet right now, or the baseball game, or wherever they're at tonight. But poor Hannah got sucked into it, so she is taking one literally for the team. Like I said, we have about 25 kids in work-based learning, so I gave you our first ever edition that talks about work-based learning and has something about each student and what they do in their particular placements. The thing I like about this, and there's a couple of tweaks that we still have to make, so it's not quite ready to go, but when people reach out and say, you know, I'm interested in a student, we'll have something to give them that shows what students are actually capable of. Or if I'm trying to reach out to an organization and convince them that they cannot live without an intern, I also have something to show them what kids are capable of. But what I love about this publication is pretty much Hannah did it. And Hannah showed up in my marketing class in the fall, and she had not been with me since she was a freshman, and I scarred her, but she came back. I made her go to the innovation contest. She said, she finally admitted 4 years later she hated me for that, but she's over it now. And so in marketing, one of their assignments was to work with the work-based learning kids and put this together. So there was a lot of back and forth, there was a lot of collaboration, there was a lot of questionnaires, a lot of digital processes. But I kind of want Hannah to tell you her story about her work-based learning, because when she came in the fall, she wasn't even going to do work-based learning, and now she has she's at a placement that she absolutely loves. So could you give them just a little bit of information?
So yeah, I started my internship at Timbercrest. I've worked there for like 3.5 years in the food service there, And so I currently go there at like 1:40, and I work with the marketing coordinator over there doing social media advertisements, recruitment ads, just numerous different things. So I kind of see it on a corporate level, and then I go and work in the kitchen. So I see two different aspects of the job. Yeah, like she said, I wasn't really planning on doing it until I had like a couple periods in my schedule. And she's like, hey, why don't you just try this? And I'm not very social, believe it or not, so this is amazing that I'm here today. But, so I started working with Heather at Timbercrest, and then she was off on Mondays, and so I started to tell Lifer that I was interested in learning more about nonprofits and other, organizations in the community. And so she has put me in contact with many different organizations. I went to the Community Foundation once. I was there for 2.5, 3 hours. I packed all their mail, which was, not exciting, but I still learned a lot about just that aspect of, the scholarship awards that a high school student wouldn't see that side of it. And then so I've been to numerous other places in Wabash County, and I go and just talk with the CEOs, the presidents. I was at Grove Wabash County, and I just sat in their conference room and we just talked for 3 hours about, what it is that they do and how they impact the community. So, yeah. And then, not expecting it, I ended up working on this newsletter that you have in front of you, and it kind of became one of those things where I'd come into class and Lifer was like, hey, I got another thing we gotta add. So I was like, all right, let's just do it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So that's pretty much it. If you have any questions for Hannah, let her know, but if you see any of these kids, tell them good job. They do good work, and it's a learning experience. And Mr. Baldwin's taken students, Mr. Miller has taken students, a lot of people have really stepped up to the plate, and just because they're in the school system doesn't mean we cut them any slack. They work just as hard here as they do out there, but these are just soft skills. We really can't teach them any other way. So
I'd just like to make a comment, Hannah. You may not be a social person, but you did a really good job right there. It was pretty obvious to me that you enjoy what you're doing.
I do, yeah.
Congrats, keep up the good work.
yeah, she's awesome.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Shelley, hold on, Mrs. Lifer, before you leave, there's one more thing I need to recognize here while you're here. Shelley was nominated by her peers as the MCS Teacher of the Year. She will represent Manchester Community Schools in the Indiana Small and Rural School State Competition, which will be announced in May. These are just a few comments from those who have worked with Shelley over the past few years. Mrs. Lifer's passion for teaching, zest for learning, and her genuine concern for the community make Shelley a truly remarkable educator. She encourages students to develop practical business sense, embrace an entrepreneurial spirit, and be the best version of themselves each and every day. Her students are encouraged to explore the what-ifs and are given the tools to act on their own answers. Shelley provides authentic business ventures, career exploration, opportunities for her students through pitch competitions such as Innovate Within, our in-house Squire store, as well as through various field trips. While visiting Shelley's classroom, you will immediately be captivated by the active environment and enthusiastic engagement of her students. Her skills and knowledge successfully contribute to the 21st century student learning programs. She has a team spirit, motivation, and standard of excellence that make it clear that teaching is her calling. It is an immense honor to recognize Ms. Shelley Lifer as Manchester Community Schools Teacher of the Year. We wish her the best of luck in the state competition.
Congratulations.
Now you can run.
Okay, busy, first 4 items. Consent items. We have the minutes from the last meeting, claims, which was in your packet, regular claims dated April 13th, prepaid claims dated March 1 to 31, payroll claims dated March 5th to March 18th. We have no grants. Donations We have a donation of $50 to Manchester Junior Senior High School for fourth grade. Threw me a curve there. It says MJSH for fourth grade girls youth basketball program from Rhinestones and Roses. We have a donation of $100 and a $30 pizza gift card for the school transition room. That was in cash from an anonymous donor. We have a donation of $500 to the Manchester Senior High School FFA program, cash from an anonymous donor. A donation of $650 to the Manchester Senior High School track program from various donors who wish to remain anonymous. We have a donation of $1,000 to the Manchester Senior High School girls tennis program from an anonymous donor. And we have no facility rentals this month. So that's the consent items. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent items. Mr. Brubaker.
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Shaw. Any discussion on the consent items?
Thank you to all donors.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, we got 5-0. Motion passes unanimously. Recommendations for approval under personnel, employment. We have Jen Birch as intramural soccer coach. Carol Collin is intramural soccer coach. Allie Kaufman is intramural soccer coach. Jen Birch is an MIS Camp Crossley sponsor. Christina Baker is a secretary for MIS. Steve Sulky is a junior high head track coach. And Joe Lamplet, volunteer wrestling coach. These are recommendations for approval. Entertain a motion to approve the hires for employment. Mr. Hensley. Second by Mr. Brubaker. All in favor of recommendations for approval for employment? 5-0, passes. We have resignations, unfortunately. We have Kaylee Lane, color guard director, Betsy Kiger, cook, Ike Young, the tech support specialist, Bethany Hall, second grade teacher at MES, Tiffany Flora, a special ed teacher, Heidi Ream is the head cheer coach, and Steve Sulky is the assistant track coach. Entertain a motion to approve those resignations. Mr. Brubaker.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Booker. All in favor? 5-0.
Thank you for your service on that, everybody, on the resignations.
Next one is Heather Turflinger as an intramural soccer coach and a MIS Camp Crossley sponsor. I'd entertain a motion to approve that. Mr. Brubaker. Mr. Hensley. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We have 4. I'm going to abstain, so that's 4-0 and 1. Jeremy, did you want to talk about Dana's contract?
Yeah, just briefly here, it was in your packet. Again, this is having Dana from Barton Coat Villama, who's been providing us with a lot of numbers and information as we've gone through the strategic planning process. All this contract is as he's basically filling an advisory role as we still continue through this process. This doesn't mean that Barton Coat Villama is our architect for any strategic planning. When we get to that point, he's just providing us information as we request it. Anything that the board has brought to the strategic plan or new numbers that we need to get, basically for his time and commitment to this project going forward. So in there it said, our fee for this work will not exceed $5,000 and likely would be much less. Likewise, if a significant design project results from this work and you hire Barton Covillama for that design, this cost will be credited toward our fee for the design work. So we just felt it was important that we got something on paper with Dana and for their services that they're providing, because they are putting in a lot of work and we're providing them a lot of things to research for us. So just looking for your approval for this.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the contract.
So moved.
Mr. Booker, second by Mr. Brubaker. Any discussion, questions?
I think people should just know, in no way are we gonna, trash or tear apart what work has went in the strategic plan. But there's other ideas, there's other tweaks to things, and that's really what this contract is about, is to come up with viable plans for some of these things and concepts that we can actually look at and talk about intelligently as we set up, these meetings with the core teams and the board and Dr. Gameau and Jeremy. There's a little work to be done yet on this, and I think this is it's a request to basically have that resource available to, instead of just talking words all the time, take a look at what some of these other, some of our ideas and concepts actually look like, so that's the only comment I want to make to it.
Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? 5-0 passes. CARES Act 2.0 is discussion.
Yes. Before break, all of you should have received the proposed CARES 2.0 allocation spending. And again, this was based on our preliminary amount that we were given of $721,127.77. We met with our cabinet team and just kind of brainstormed ideas and thoughts. What are things that we feel were important? One, to help with closing the learning gap loss that we may encounter or have encountered when we had to shift to online last spring. What are the things that we think could help us bring some of this back for our students, for our staff, and benefit them moving forward? We know some of these things on the list are one-time expenses. We know some of these items are things that we could continue to carry forward, maybe in another year after what's shown here. The first two items at the top, the therapist support, we would look to outsource therapy support for those in need, issues that go deeper than what maybe our guidance counselors can provide them. And then also a full-time, what we call guidance counselor, would be more mental therapist, counselor for the schools, that all the schools could share. We have, in this amount, budgeted those positions for 2 years. So we have until September of 2023 to expend these dollar amounts through this CARES Act money. So all of you have had that list, and at the very bottom of the list, if you scroll all the way down, please, right in there, these are additional items that were talked about, but you had to make some cuts somewhere because we were over $721,000 with these other items. So, we felt that these are other items that we can consider and look at. What I will have to do is we will have to go in and submit our application. And we just got more guidance on this right at the end of spring break that I'll share with you here in just a minute. But we'll have to enter all of these items into the application process, give it a dollar amount, submit it to the state. The state then reviews what we've submitted, and then they can come back and okay everything. They could okay pieces and parts and deny pieces and parts of it, and then we would have to either come up with another justification for those that they would deny and or replace it with something else. And so some of these things at the bottom could be replaceable items in there. One bit of good news, we don't usually get this from the state very often, but the total did increase. So we went from 721,000 to 773,000, 809 and 27 cents. So essentially, we have $52,681.50 more than what they initially allocated. So that this is our final allocation amount, and just didn't have time to make any adjustments on it because we got it over spring break and I wasn't here over spring break. So we do know that we have about $50,000 more to play with this round, that we can submit some other additional items with. The other piece of this that we do also know that will be coming down the pipe at some point is what I'm going to refer to as CARES 3.0 money. Additional monies that the state will be sending us similar to this CARES 2.0. We don't know allocation amount. We don't know when that application is going to be due. We do know that CARES 2.0, the application has to be submitted by May 14th. So we need to start entering this information and getting it to the state so that they can, and they usually turn it around pretty quick, but we want to make sure that we're expending the money, getting the okay to, and then it becomes a reimbursement process from there. So any expenditures we have, then we have to submit for reimbursement with all CARES dollars for the whole process. So I'm just going to throw out a number for CARES 3.0 that we're hearing could be anywhere from $1.3 to $1.6 million additionally that we could receive in CARES 3.0 by itself. The one caveat with that is that 20% of that money has to be spent on the learning loss gap. So things that can help contribute to learning loss and getting students back to where they should be. So they haven't given us much more guidance other than that right now, but that's in the national law. That's part of that. So that would be for the the CARES 3.0. And we just don't know details when they're going to release that, what our time frame is to expend that. But that will be coming down the pipe as well at some point. But other than that, that's all I know on the 3.0.
Is there a percentage on this 2.0?
2.0, there is no percentage on anything at this point. But in the 3.0, the latest stimulus package that the government passed, they stipulated in that 20% of whatever our 3.0 amount's going to be off the top first has to be dedicated to learning loss. So we're going to, from what I gather, we're going to have to provide what our 20% amount's going to be spent on first. They're going to okay it, and then the remainder that's left, then we can start going in and applying for the other items that we think we want to spend money on. So
I have another question, Jeremy. Sure. It says certified substitute costs $90,000.
Yeah.
We passed that resolution due to COVID when people were sick.
Yeah.
We were paying them. Is that money included in this $90,000?
The $90,000 is a number that we used from the prior to the pandemic, the year prior to the pandemic, what we spent in substitute costs for teachers. And it was about $90,000. So it was our thought that we could take this money, put it take some of the CARES 2 money, earmark $90,000 to go to substitute pay for the next school year, for the 21-22 school year, and then that would save us $90,000 from our education fund.
Are we going to try and recoup I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but are we going to try and recoup either in 2.0 or 3.0 the money that we had to spend?
Not in 2.0, but it is a consideration for 3.0 if they would allow us to.
And has that window open for 2.0 yet?
2.0, they just opened the window I got in today, so I can start entering information into the application. Yeah. I started the process of just putting in the basic information, but none of this information yet. But that has to be done by May 14th.
Okay. What about the bond that we just did to pay people?
Yeah.
Is any of that recoverable where we can use some of this money to pay that off?
Not to my knowledge. With that being debt service money, I don't think we can use that. But we can obviously find other ways to help save our education and operations fund with some of the things here. So like, for instance, the mental health or the mental guidance counselor, you know, that would come out typically of our education fund. Right now, we're budgeting 2 years worth of that using CARES money. And then hopefully we'll be in a better position in 2 years and we could take that salary on. Or if CARES 3.0 allows us to use that money, some of these things we could continue to carry on for another year or so beyond that.
And that would be kind of my major concern looking at this, is we're kind of building the empire, and demand's still going down.
Yes, and that's where you gotta be careful. You know, anytime you put grant monies into positions, at some point, you know that position either is you're gonna have to take it on, or you're gonna just say, hey, as long as we have this grant money, it's a 2-year position, and then we're gonna have to reevaluate from there. And we all feel that, and we talked about that as a cabinet. We understand that as well. We also know that the pandemic has created some other issues, and that our students and our staff need some of these additional supports. And in a typical, without this money, we probably wouldn't be able to do some of these things. With this money, we can provide those extra supports, maybe give us a little time, and then we could take on some of those positions potentially within our normal budget. So that was kind of our mind thought and how we tried to look at all this. And not just buy things, not just purchase things, but what are things that could help us, help our students, help our staff. That's kind of our approach to how we tried to spend these monies.
Mr. Markham, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Actually, two minor requests and then a question. On the, Randy, if you could scroll down to the second page, top of second page. Right there, thanks. So the dual language kindergarten teacher, since we have $57,000 left, is that right? Approximately, which is what you mentioned?
Yep.
Could we put, on the dual language kindergarten, could we put another $50,000 for the next year on there?
We potentially could, yes.
So we don't have to pay for 2 years essentially of that? Well, don't
Right.
have to pay, but I mean, it's coming from the CARES Act too. That would be a decent allocation of money, I would think. The other question would be, actually the recommendation on the key fobs. On the application that you do, make sure that it says hands-free entry. It is incredibly important that that says that, because that would be part of why that would be approved. Hands-free entry. That's what key fobs are on the CARES Act. My question actually was on the full-time guidance counselor and the therapist support. And this may be, you may not be able to answer this.
Sure.
I realize that, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. On the outsourcing therapy support, you said we'll do that for kids that are in excessive need. My question is, what is the $80,000 for the one full-time counselor? What is that person's qualifications compared to the person that we would outsource to?
Sure. Yeah, that's a question that I'm not going to be able to answer. I wasn't necessarily in those discussions of that. But the full-time, obviously, that $80,000 would be salary and benefits as a full-time position.
I would hope that the person that at that level would be able to handle everything that the outsourced person can handle, essentially. Because that's, I mean, we obviously need more our counselors and more assistance and more aid for our students. I just want to make sure that that $80,000 is
Sure.
spent well, possibly even, it depends on the person and the qualifications, of course, and the certifications of the person. Or we could get 2 people almost for that, but I'm not allocating for that, but I'm just saying, I want to make sure that those people are obviously worth that, which obviously is the point. So, thank you, that's all I had.
Yep.
Oh, did you have?
I do have an answer to that.
You do?
that
Great,
question, yeah.
awesome.
So there is a difference between the backgrounds for a licensed mental health therapist and a school guidance counselor. Our guidance counselors are trained to do things like very lower level friendship building, working with kids, interpersonal relationships, working on skills that students will need to succeed in the classroom. However, at the present time, our guidance counselors that are trained for this purpose are also doing the job of a licensed mental health therapist. For example, when students exhibit pervasive needs, we have a program called Securely that monitors emails, and things that students write. If a student sometimes puts down that they are thinking of self-harm or committing suicide or things of that nature, very, very grave, obviously very serious, that's falling in the laps of the administrators and the guidance counselors who don't necessarily have the requisite training in order to help those students at the level they need to. And unfortunately, our guidance counselors right now are basically running triage for these kids, and they're not able to fulfill a lot of the responsibilities that we ask them to do as a guidance counselor. And in addition to meeting with students, they're responsible for scheduling. They're even at my level, Christina is going to have to take over and do some scheduling as we transition our new secretary in, because that's part of what she is trained to do and what we're going to ask her to do. So our guidance counselors are very, very well trained for what they've gotten training for, and certainly it would be possible in some cases that a guidance counselor might also have mental health therapist training, but that's not always the case. So being able to contract out services to a person who is licensed in that area based on the number of kids that we determine have that need for that care beyond what the guidance counselor can provide, that's a lot of flexibility for us, and it allows our guidance counselor to do things like get back in the classrooms and work on, working with kids on skills that every kid, K-12 needs in order to find success during their school day, while we can have somebody else that, meets with those kids that exhibit a need beyond.
Thank you. I never doubted the outsourcing part. I think that's very important, and I know that there are a lot of schools that do that currently anyway. My question is the 80,000, the full-time position, is that somebody that has the equal qualifications as the people that we would outsource to, has that mental health license, or what is the word you used? The therapist of some sort?
Potentially, you could probably find somebody in the application process, but that's not a guarantee. It's basically, two separate fields. It's like teaching licensure. I'm licensed, in my teaching degree as a kindergarten through 6th grade teacher. I probably possess some of the requisite skills and knowledge to teach a high school level class, but that's not the area where my expertise is in. It's kind of the same thing here within the counseling and mental health fields. Counseling is a very broad topic, but what you specialize in within your counseling, that's going to be much more acute and specific.
I noticed the $80,000, and that was one of my questions was, for that money, are we getting a guidance counselor that's trained like we have now? Or are we getting one with a different degree or different background? So that was the question, because it's kind of vague up there with I'm trying to figure that out. So
I'd like to see the word professional in that, to your point.
I love our guidance counselor. Sorry, I don't mean to. I'm not talking anything different about that. I'm just trying to figure out what the $80,000 is for. If we're hiring somebody with different qualifications than we have in the district currently, or if we're hiring the same qualifications, essentially.
I understand that, and that's a good and a valid question. I just wanted to make sure that, because administrators, we worked on putting some of this together, and so based on what we see as the need in our schools, this is something that we're advocating for and we feel like we need, is to have an additional guidance counselor, because right now, even mine, Christina, she's splitting time and working with the 7th and 8th grade as well. So, we had a situation come up not too long ago where, she's in here in this building, and we've got something up that, she's got to stop what she's doing and drive back over here. So
I know we definitely need more guidance counselors. Don't get me wrong. I know that. I'm just trying to figure out the $80,000 figure up there as to what qualifications the person we would hire is for. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mike.
No, you're all right. So I would hope that would be the professional mental health therapist, like we've talked about for 2 years, and that would be our point person dealing with some of the more elevated, situations that we face, not only from students, it could be teachers, it could be board members like me, right? I mean, and I would hope that that person would be hired in the thought that they could also work with the current counselors to propagate the, social-emotional, this environment that we want, to have through the school system. So I just kind of, just piggyback on what you're saying. Hopefully this isn't, a counselor like we have. Hopefully this is somebody with those skill sets that are gonna, basically take care of what we've been talking about for 2 years, so.
Yeah, absolutely, that was the intention. It wasn't the intention to have like a counselor and a half. It was two different people with two very specific sets of skills that can best meet the needs of our students. Thank you for giving me the floor.
Thank you.
Any other board discussion?
I was wanting to ask Jeremy, can you give me a quick idea of what, I lost my train of thought after listening to everybody else. You were talking about learning loss or filling the gap. What kinds of things would that be? Just for my personal information, it doesn't really matter. What kind of things are that?
I mean, it could be, like, for instance, on here on our list already that we have, it would be providing some additional instructional aids at schools, because that's a little more beyond of what you've had to help with that process. It would be adding the literature library that we have on this list at MIS. Those things that can help with the learning process. Sue, you may have some other ideas in your mind right off the bat that would qualify for that.
I was just trying to get just an idea, because you said like 3.0 is going to be 20% of maybe over $1 million. I was just
Yep.
I would just say we've looked at a lot of data, and that's kind of how we arrived at this. And a lot of it goes back to our district goals of increasing nonfiction reading comprehension and academic vocabulary, as well as problem solving and some other things like that. And so we were very specific in targeting areas that we have seen sort of a dip in those, and maybe those things would have been apparent in non-COVID as well. And so this is an opportunity to address a district goal, COVID or not, that we feel we really need to address. And really, that came across very strong. We looked at our data and looked at what we have in place and where we're lacking in some of those areas. And so the reading specifically was a target for us in this grant. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. That answers my question. I was just trying to put numbers to the ideas or whatever. It's not a problem. Thank you.
Any other board, do you have any suggestions or corrections that you would like Jeremy and Dr. Rameau's staff to work on between now and the May meeting?
Well, kind of another thought for 3.0 is when we go to do raises next year, are we going to have to bond again? Or is there some thought behind that? And when you say we, who exactly put this list together?
It was the cabinet members, so principals, all of our transportation, Sue Janegi, food service. I mean, all of those people were at the table when we just started the initial list, throw out ideas, thoughts, areas that could, potentially cost us money out of our education operations funds. Is this a way where we could save those two funds by using some of the CARES money on these items? So that was kind of our initial process with this. But yes, that did come up about, existing personnel. Is there a way to fund some of them, some of those positions that we currently have through CARES dollars with 3.0? Again, going back to saving your education fund and your operations fund, and trying to help yourself over the next couple of years if you can with these dollars that we know will not keep coming probably down the road. So
I know last year we had that $198,000 and we put the digital learning position in, and we put in, what was it, a CNA to help MA?
Yeah. Yep.
And then now we got the Spanish kindergarten
Yep.
teacher in there. Was there a discussion about funding the other two positions that we had already put in there further out?
Yeah, and they're on this list as well for next year. And that would be the give and take with some of this, what CARES 3.0 will allow us to do. Maybe that would allow us for them to be funded another year beyond that. Or maybe we'll be in a position with being able to save our education fund and operations fund with some of these things, that we would be able to take maybe some of those positions on within our normal budgeting process. So, yeah, it's kind of a chess game. It's not, you know, when you get money and they tell you got to spend it by a certain date and you have to apply for it, and you're just trying to think of the things that you think can benefit your students and your staff and help them along the way, but also trying to look at the big picture and helping our funds and our budget through this process as well, knowing that when you add people, at some point you're either going to have to take that on, or it's just up front that, look, this is a one-year position, maybe a two-year position, and when the funding's out, your position may not be here. And that's the conversations that we had, and we know we have to be up front with those type of things.
I do have one suggestion, that if you could go back and talk to Dr. Hermo and
Sure.
in the cabinet. We've talked about this for over the last 2 years, and in the bottom half here, if something gets rejected, we have $10,000 in there for custodial and PPE supplies. Since this is COVID money, it's actually two things. One, I'm wondering why that isn't up there in the 721, and maybe with this extra money, maybe we could move that up. And the other thing is training.
Yes.
For our custodial staff. We've been talking about doing that for 2 years, and this looks, you know, with COVID and all the extra chemicals and stuff, it might be a prime time to go ahead and try and get that done. So this is a discussion item on tonight's agenda. Does anybody else have any other comments, suggestions?
I think when I look at this, you know, it's federal money, state allocated, right? But, you know, people look at this and they go, that's free money. That's not free money. This is what's driving up our national debt. So, you know, what I don't want to run into is continually adding people and then next year talking about another bond to pay for raises and pay for people, you know? And so we've got a little leeway. I want to assume that this is use it or lose it type of thing, right? So, I mean, of course we're going to spend it, but, you know, I don't look at it as free money. This, you know, our kids and our grandchildren will be paying for this money. So again, the best spend for that is what we need to be looking at here. So, and I don't really have disagreement with a lot of things on there. My concern is in the future, when we add all these positions, you know, just because we have the money, what are we, you know, how do we pay for them in the future? And I know that's on you guys' mind, to just make that point. You know, we've already did a bond last year, you know, for raises and paying people. And so I'd like you guys to get creative and understand, you know, how we went in debt for that. So how can we use some of this to get, you know, pay off some of that debt? You know, so it's, you know, it's kind of a scary game. So.
Anybody else? Okay, since we have two board members and Dr. Ramon missing tonight, and this was a discussion information, I had a conversation with Jeremy. This will be an action item for next month on May the 11th. He can go ahead and get started and see if they throw anything out, because there was a motion and a vote by the board that this list of stuff had to be approved back in, I believe, February. So to give everybody a chance to be here and have their input, and this will be an agenda item for approval next month.
If I may, Jeremy and the cabinet, thank you for your work on this. There's some really good stuff on here, so thank you.
Mr. Markham, Sustainable Energy Alternatives.
I'm going to turn the floor over to Mrs. Janegi to just give a brief description about this.
Sustainable Energy Alternatives is a course we're hoping to add at the high school next year. We have great interest in this field in our community. If you look at place-based learning opportunities, ideas of, wind energy, solar energy, geothermal, all of those things are certainly things that our students are aware of in this area. There's a couple of things about this course that make it appealing to add to our course offerings. One of them is we're looking at that next level programs of study. It fits in an ag pathway, and it also fits in with like an engineering type pathway as well. There are two different courses. There's sustainable energy alternatives, and then there's another one that's a little more advanced that if this one goes, we might want to add in the future, environmental sustainability. But this course, the other reason we really like the idea of adding this course is it fulfills a science requirement for all diplomas. So right now, our students take a couple of different pathways. They might take biology, chemistry, and then they might take physics or AP biology, anatomy and physiology. There are those students though that take biology, then they go to integrated chemistry and physics, which is kind of a more of a non-academic track, and then there's nothing else for them. They go into chemistry, and sometimes the math in a chemistry course is very, very difficult for some students. This kind of helps. Not that this course is an easy course by any means, but the math would be a little less rigorous than it would be in a chemistry course. So this, we believe, would set our students on a path for success, so they have something appealing to them after they take integrated chem phys. So that's a win, I think, in that area as well. When Mrs. Metzger kind of polled the students to ask about interest, she had 35 students that said they were interested in taking this course. So that would be almost two sections of students interested in that. Right now it is a CTE funded course. We know that that is kind of a revolving door on what's being funded and what's not being funded, and we try to follow that and get the best dollar value that we can. Right now it's a less than moderate value, so it's $200 a student. So multiply that times the 35 or so, we might get more. That's kind of the number we're working off of. I also have a grant, the Career Ladders Planning Grant, and some of that money in that grant is for promoting STEM-based curriculum and courses, and this would definitely fall under that. And so the additional costs for the position could be funded through that grant. We're looking at probably a 3/7 position for this because there would have to be some prep time involved. So that's kind of, we would love to see this course added. We think it's best for our students. And again, we're excited about something that's sort of place-based. Questions?
What's a 3/7 position?
3 periods out of the 7. So if you would take a full-time contract, you would just chop it into 7 pieces. It would take 2 class periods and a prep period.
Okay, so we're not hiring a teacher to teach this, somebody's already gonna teach it?
I think we would have to look at hiring someone to do this. I don't think we have anyone that's qualified to teach this course that would have that much time in their day. So we would have to hire a 3/7 position.
Mr. Turflinger, I think to clarify, tell me if I'm wrong with this, but it's basically a half a day position and $15,084 a year. That's what she's asking for us to approve or to look at.
Yeah, a little less than half time, but yeah, you're correct that it's just that $15,824 that will be $7,000 of it would be paid for out of CTE funding, and the other part of that money, the remaining $8,824, would come from the Career Ladders Planning Grant. So there would be no cost out of the general fund for this position.
Couple of thoughts on my end. This is the future. This is also another differentiator for us, for our students. And for $15,000 a year on a salary, or I assume it's an hourly, but salary at the same time, that's a win-win. It's for me anyway. Plus, if we ever get that solar panels that we're talking about, they can utilize that as learning base too. So.
We went up, just kind of a side note, we have the solar panels on top of the high school, and I went up with the AP Environmental Science class, and we were talking about the solar panels. Mr. Burnworth was talking about that, and the students are very, very interested in that and learning more about how, you know, the amount of energy that those create and that sort of thing. So I saw a lot of excitement just in that little bit that we had we did that about a month ago.
Just a side note, I think, I can't speak for them, but I think if somebody contacts the Church of the Brethren,
right,
that might be a good learning avenue at this point too. But yeah. So anyway, that's it.
So, any other questions about that?
What would this person do the other half of the time? Are they gonna be full-time or part-time or?
Well, I mean, we'd have to advertise the position. It could be that they would have other things to do in the school. I mean, they might have another, it just depends on who we hire, I guess, whether they're already employed at the school or whether we're not offering them any more than 3/7 position for teaching at this point in time. So
have you given any thought to this person, perhaps, you know, in Industry 4.0?
When you look at who can teach the class, it can be an industry expert with some paperwork involved, but yeah.
Okay, because I'm just thinking you got 3/7, then you got, if this person's full-time, you got another half day that if it's the right person.
That could definitely be a good fit.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
We have thought about that.
The other thing, you know, on this, to kind of add to your point, Robert, is again, financial literacy. You know, you don't step into solar projects and stuff lighthearted, right? There's a long-term payback on a lot of renewable energy. So, you know, it's another opportunity for them to learn, you know, about matching the dollars up with, and then understanding the full, you know, the whole money on the payback on some of these things, because it's not cheap. You know, often these systems aren't cheap, right? They're
right.
So, okay, thank you.
Well, with the recent approval from Heartland for the 1-hour classes, I think we sent 35 of them down there. Maybe between now and next fall, we can add another one. You maybe find some grant money or something and make it a full-time position teaching 2 of those courses. So
I like the flexibility this offers, and you're right, that could definitely be something that we could expand on, which I think is exciting. You know, we always look at what's best for kids. I really do feel like this is it.
okay.
Is this in any way fit into CARES Act?
It could. It doesn't even need to right now because I already have the other grant that could fund it, and that money was specific for the high demand STEM positions. Unless we add more high demand STEM positions to our course offerings, I don't know what else we would use that grant money for. So we're good. And the Career Ladders Planning Grant is a 3-year grant. So.
And how much does that cover again? I'm sorry.
It would cover the remaining balance. So it would cover. So if we had 35 students at $200, that's the $7,000. And if my math is right, then the $8,824 Career Ladders would cover.
So we aren't, the grant covers it for 3 years. We don't pay anything out of education funds.
I wrote into that line item of the grant $32,000, and that got approved.
So we don't have anything out of our education fund for 3 years.
Not that I'm aware of. Did you include, well, we wouldn't have benefits, right? I mean, it would be, okay.
We'd have to pay benefits for it. Well, half position, unless they're full position, we don't.
That's right, so.
Yeah.
Is there equipment required for this class?
There might be some, but I think probably, I could probably use Title IV money to pay for some of that as well. We haven't really, we need to dive into that some. We already have access to a few things that I think would work, and we already have some curriculum for wind energy and solar energy. And so we'd have to just look and see what's available. But I think we're in pretty good shape when it comes to curriculum.
Okay, well, I guess Dr. Grimaud will put it on for approval next month.
All right, thank you.
This is
Thank
exciting.
you, Sue. Appreciate it. Mr. Miller, technology presentation.
All right, close the door so nobody leaves. A few months ago, Dr. Bruno asked if I'd do a presentation mainly to help the new school board members kind of get an idea of what some of the technology we're using for our classrooms. And because we have such a new group of board members, thought it would be beneficial for everybody. So we're just going to kind of talk about that a little bit. Let's see here. Always fun to find the mouse. And one more click here. Okay. So again, this is more to kind of just give you an idea of what we have in our classrooms, where we've been, where we've come from, and a few of the other things that we're doing in technology. Right now, many of you know, if you have kids in the school system, what the kids are bringing home or taking home with them. We have Acer Chromebooks, Spin 11s, Spin 511s. Those are K through 12, okay? And they're take-home, which is an 11.6-inch screen. They're 2-in-1 convertible. Dave has one there in front of him, I believe. They're all Chrome OS with a durable protective shell. And teachers, on the other hand, have a MacBook Air laptop. For COVID, most of the MIS and junior, senior high school have a Chromebook also for when we were dealing with a lot of virtual students or hybrid students also that were taking classes both at home, coming in here. So we were using that so they could monitor see their students in one screen and use their computer to present at the same time. Web cameras at MIS and MJSH, basically for the same thing. For presentations in the classroom, we have projectors at the high school, active panels, touch panels, not unlike that TV screen there, but the teacher walks up and touch and they can move things around, they can write on things. Mainly at the MES and intermediate school, because this is the best way to deliver the instruction. Also allows the kids to come up there and manipulate things. MES, MIS have sound lifts, which is nothing more than amplifiers in the classrooms. Teachers will have pendants that they wear, but more importantly, when a student is reading or wants to communicate in the classroom, they have a handheld mic that they can use so everybody can hear. I think we can all remember back when we were in school, the one student who would read and you would barely hear them saying anything. So this helps them with that things. And then again, the dot cams at MES and MIS, which allows them to put the books underneath as they're reading or put a worksheet there so that they can write on it, and then that shows up on the display. So that's a lot of what we have in the classrooms and what the students have. This is pretty busy, but it kind of gives you a timeline of what's happened over the last 11 years technology-wise. And I'm going to try to bring my mouse over here. 2010, we purchased iMac computers for MES. We moved up here, and during 2011, 2012, we gave the high school and intermediate school some laptops instead of, these were big dinosaur type Apple computers that took up a lot of space. There was no way they were going to take them home because they weighed about 40 pounds each. I'm sure they're hanging off of some boats by now for anchors. At the same time, We put in fiber wide area network between here and Laketon, and we also purchased managed services through Metronet. Our connectivity between the buildings up until that point in time was a microwave antenna. And that worked okay, but if it was raining or if it was windy, you could lose a lot of signal strength, and it was very slow. You could share files, you could send email and things like that, but you certainly weren't going to share video or anything like what we are doing now. About midway, we started, at that point in time, we were, part of the fiber network was as we were thinking about one-to-one, how are we going to prepare our infrastructure to be able to support from 400 computers to close to 2,000 devices at that point in time is what we were thinking. So how do we prepare for that? So that was the fiber process. We added wireless at the high school and intermediate school, and still needing to support the elementary schools, we purchased a couple carts of laptops. And that was so that the third graders could have experience using a computer, because that's what they were taking the I-STEP test on. So we wanted them to have some experience and be comfortable using that. You can see down here at the bottom, or I should say up at the top, board approves our one-to-one proposal in the spring of 2013. And after that, we right away had iPads for the teachers so that they could spend the summer with them, get familiar with that device, and also take the training. We had Apple in here, we had various trainings throughout the high school and intermediate school. And then in the fall, well, I guess we added wireless to MES, but in the fall was our iPad rollout. And what that was is at that point in time, we were one-to-one grades 5 through 12. Okay? And those were, we were taking them home at 5 and 6th grade at that point in time. So all those devices were going home. We also had a few in the 4th grade, a couple of carts that they could share amongst themselves. And as we move forward, we can see down here, updated our teacher MacBooks. And I think during that time, we learned a lot. And, you know, it was our first adventure into the one-to-one. How do we deliver? How do teachers deliver digital content? How do they use these devices to help improve their instructions? The rest of us, the students were learning how to use them also in the classroom, how to turn in assignments, how to do assignments, how to use applications, how to use the device responsibly. We also found out that iPads in the hand of teenagers aren't necessarily a good thing. They weren't built structurally for them. We dealt with a lot of repairs at that same time. Also, I think of those of us that were supporting, were trying to figure out, working with how to support the teachers so that they could move forward with things. We move ahead. Again, I mentioned that a lot of repairs. We were also finding that the Apple EcoStructure for student devices was pretty expensive. Everybody wanted apps, and that was the way Apple, you know, even though they were only 99 cents each, it was always an app here, an app there, an app everywhere. So we just kind of decided between that, English teachers wanted keyboards to help students type and learn how to type that, and overall process, the Chromebook appeared to be a better product for us, suiting everybody's needs, though a few math teachers would tell you they would disagree because they liked the ability to write with the iPad. But the board approved in 2016 to move to Chromebooks, and we then took the iPads, we sold some to the community, but we took the best ones and put a couple hundred of those into the elementary schools, a few in each classroom, so that the teachers could have pods and centers to use for the students. dot cams, you see some, we did active displays. That back here, we purchased smart boards, and then we purchased active displays once those started wearing out. And then last fall, we refreshed with a new model of Chromebook, and this was a 2-in-1 convertible unit, like what's back there in the corner, so it could flip over and be used like a tablet, okay? And so it kind of brought back some of that iPad feel that math teachers could use for their students to write their assignments. And then at that point in time, we're still not one-to-one throughout. So at the point in time that we moved to, I should say before we got the new version of the Chromebooks, we purchased Chromebooks at the elementary school. Okay, so at that point in time, we started out with 2-to-1, so there was one device for every 2 students, K through 2, and 3rd grade was 1-to-1. And then when we purchased last fall, we were able to purchase extra so that we had devices for all the students, but yet they did not go home in the elementary school. That changed March 13th of 2020, right? When the pandemic hit, the conversation was, is this something that we could do? Is this something we wanted to do? And I think we felt it was the best thing for our students to be able to send a device home, no matter what grade level, so that they could at least attempt to continue with their education, okay? We didn't stop, even though the pandemic was here. We installed a new fiber connection between here and again Laketon and throughout the town, new fiber connections. And fiber doesn't wear out, but because our funding for things like our internet, which pays 70 to 80% of our large internet bill, and for our managed network, we were able to put that fiber in free, okay, I should say no cost to us. And what that allowed us to do was take a vendor that was less expensive. We were paying $4,300 a month, 70% of that was paid for, so what, 30 times 43, $1,200, versus now we're paying about $570 out of pocket for that. And because E-rate is federally funded, we have to put that out to bid. And when there's such a disparity in the monthly costs, we don't have an option. We basically have to take the low bidder at that point in time. So we switched vendors, put in a new fiber. While online registration and online textbook payments was quite handy for our no-touch society for enrollment, that was all in the plans really in the fall prior to anybody knew anything about a pandemic. So we were kind of lucky or had a crystal ball that we didn't know we were using, I guess. Any questions about the timeline? It looks like a highway map in Chicago, I know, but we'll go on. Access and restrictions on our students for the devices. You can see here K through 6, email. They can, at the elementary school, K through 2, I skipped 3, but they are under the same restriction. They can send and receive email from staff and other students, where MIS can only email staff members, okay? Mainly that's because Mrs. Corus's teachers, Mrs. Corus, they wanted to have that ability to teach these kids. These are now the digital natives, right? These are the people who, from the point they come into school through 12th grade for the next 12 to 13 years, depending where they're at, is going to have a device. So they need to learn how to be responsible for what their use of the devices. Intermediate school are a little less structured, restricted, or whatever. So we were having a lot of problems with them emailing back and forth. So we just restricted their use to being able to email and receive staff. They can only install the apps that we approve, and those are requested by teachers. okay? It's not the IT department saying what apps they can have, but the teachers tell us what apps they want their students to have. And then the websites, we'll talk about filtering, but it's our most restricted settings that we have. 7th and 8th grade, they can send and receive email from students and MCS staff. Email to and from external domains are blocked, so they can't be emailing somebody outside of here. They can't receive emails from outside of here other than those that are considered educationally necessary. Okay? Apps and extensions, again, they're restricted to only apps that are approved, and they also have the most restrictive websites. 9th through 12, they can send and receive. They basically have the same email settings as the 7th and 8th graders. I will say that they're probably a little less restrictive, so we're allowing them to receive emails from more websites as far that they sign up to for class purposes, and so teachers need to hit us up so we can approve that. They can install apps and extensions unless we blocked it, so kind of flip. We block certain things that would not be, that would allow them to circumvent our systems, but pretty much other than that, if they can find it useful in their life, that's good. And the website use is slightly less restricted. They have access to things like Pinterest and Twitter because classes are using those tools. Okay. Internet filtering, let's see here. Why do we filter internet? Because we believe it's part of student safety. We also believe that our family and community wants that. And also it's compliance for our E-rate, for SIPA compliance and E-rate. And so in order to get all this money that we get, and I think last year we received, was it $35,000 to $50,000 from E-rate, and in order to qualify for that, we have to have filtering in place to protect our students. How all do we filter it? We use the web filter app. We have restrictions in Google that we can set both globally and individually. We use, excuse me, the Securely app. And what it does is it takes websites and it'll categorize websites, okay? And then we get to decide if we block them or allow them. And of those 13 or 15 sites, that's what we allow. All right, now there's other sites out there, news sites and things like that, but Securely has deemed those okay, and so they don't bother to categorize them separately. Additionally, all searches are forced into safe search mode. And I don't know if you know the difference, but if you go to Google and you're using safe search, it minimizes the noise, the undesirable results that you would like to see students keep away from. Excuse me. Keyword scanning. I don't know how to best describe that, but think of things that you wouldn't want people to see, and that it detects those words. So if you were to, for example, do a search on poker, it would block that. Or gambling, it would block that. Restrictive YouTube, again, strict mode allows videos from any source as long as they are not deemed objectionable by Google. All right. Then if a staff member has a video they want to show that's blocked, they have the permission or ability to approve that website for access or that YouTube video for access for the students. And then last, we can block any website, we can, or allow a website. So occasionally there may be a site that's been thrown into one of those categories that is actually useful. Auditor, you heard Tommy talk about that a little bit, and so we employ the tool, and it scans emails and attachments, Google Docs, comments in Google Docs, and Google Drive, things such as cyberbullying, violence, self-harm, nudity, and profanity, and then I get the emails, the counselors get the emails, the principals get the emails letting us know that. And there's a confidence level. In other words, it may be a confidence 1 if it talks about, it's even hard to think of something that low level, but maybe hitting a baseball, using the word hit may be a level 1 versus the word kill, which could be a confidence level 5, all right, which is a higher level. Of course, when we're reading To Kill a Mockingbird, our emails explode.
Tony,
Yeah.
back to one point you made, when on that restriction, when Google kind of restricts the video, you said all the teachers basically have the ability to unlock that. Is there any guidance on that at all? Or is it just personal preference?
It's, I mean, they're professionals. Hopefully they know what's right and wrong to have in the classroom, so, no.
Okay, I just wondered.
We're allowing them free rein to use what they think is appropriate in their classroom. Okay. The next step in when we go through and scan these is if there's a high confidence result, that gets fed off to a human at the securely place, and they will review it for, what do I want to say? For if this is an issue or if it's just something like To Kill a Mockingbird. If they say I'm going to kill somebody, then that's going to be of concern. So a human gets to review that, and if they see there's searches on how to kill somebody or how about to harm themselves, then they're going to email, text, and if they don't get responses to that, they'll actually call school staff, and if they can't get a hold of any of the school staff, they're going to call the police to do a wellness check on that student. And we've had a few. Not too many, thankfully, but we've actually had a few of that take place. Restrictions, again, we can set those at the Google level, that everybody gets in. We do force the securely extension on all devices since it is our web filtering. We do not delete the browser history. That gives the principals and ourselves the ability to go in if there's concerns, and we can see websites that have been using. And then Google is where we get to set the email restrictions. We can actually, we refer to it as the digital dungeon. So if you have students who can't control themselves, there's ways that we can tie them down tighter. We can block them from emailing anybody other than a staff member. We can lock them down to not being able to install any apps. So there's a lot of things we can do. We can set those individually. I'm trying to think here, what else? All individual restrictions must be requested through counselors and building principals. So even if a parent calls in and says, I don't want my kid to be able to email any other students, that has to come from a building principal or counselor because they're in charge of their education, of that student's education. And so they have to be willing to talk to the parents and explain how that could cause problems in the classroom. And that's just one example. Okay? Where do our restrictions and filtering work? At school, home, grandma's, at their friends, at McDonald's, at church, Disney World, Disney Resorts, Disney Cruises, Mount Rushmore, the Alamo, the Louvre, the Vatican. It pretty much works everywhere, okay? Because of the way we've set up the device, it phones home back to securely, and that's what tells them doesn't matter, and we force that. Any devices such as the phones that we don't own or control, they get the most restrictive internet access through our system. So everything's managed that way. So I promised Dr. Vermeau I'd try to keep it to 20 minutes. It's the last time it was 50. To 23.
Thank you.
They don't let me talk about technology too often. So.
Hey,
What questions?
Mr. Miller, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
It has to do with the CARES Act money too. Sorry, don't want to go back to that, but I noticed on,
You notice that all my stuff got put on that last list, is that what you noticed?
well, yeah, but at the same time, well, I hope that the faculty and staff devices can be put on the 3.0.
We hope so too.
So, but anyway, the doc cams
Yes.
that you have on your presentation here, you have it on MES and MIS. But on the 2.0, it also says doc cams, 45 total devices for MES and MIS. What, if we have it already there, why is that on for $4,400? Something like that. And that was, I know this is, I'm just actually asking.
Yep, no, just updates. So the devices at MES are 7 years old, we're having problems, and MIS is 3 years old, so it's just time to update them.
And can somebody answer what are swivel cameras? I still don't know what those
I'll be
are.
happy to
I know what
answer
doc
that.
cameras are, but
So in this virtual world, teaching world we're discussing, the ability, teachers don't like to stand still when they're instructing. They want to be able to walk around and things like that. Well, it's hard to get your camera to work with you. So this is actually a little robot, if you think of it that way. It's a little device that sits on a stand. The teacher wears a pendant, which is also a microphone at the same time. So as they walk around, the device that sits on this robotic can will follow them around. So they're able to teach more naturally and do their presentations. They also have a microphone on them, so that gives it a better sound for those students that are virtual.
so that's only for virtual learners pretty much. That's the only benefit for it. Unless you're in a large area that you have a screen of you anyway, right? Okay. Okay.
Pretty sweet device. Pretty sweet device.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, I do have one.
Yeah.
I know it was in 2019, we bought, I think it was like $500,000 worth of Chromebooks. When are those scheduled to be updated again? Can we use 3.0 money next year and do that early?
We could, however, we're only about halfway through. At the end of this year, we'll use 2 of our 4 years that we had planned on.
Okay, so that was, I was thinking it was 3 years, so we actually planned for 4 years.
We had planned for these devices were a little bit more sturdier, and yeah, that's what we had planned on, 4 years.
Are you seeing any significant battery wear because these kids charge them every night and they're run all day? Or?
Well, we wish more of them would charge it every night.
Yeah, well,
I would tell you that.
I'm not going to go there.
But no, we're not seeing battery issues. I mean, we see broken displays, keys that pop off, some motherboard issue, Wi-Fi card issues, but those are all being taken care of by our K-12 system people that we use. I will say it's a little difficult to get parts right at the moment. We've all heard about the chip shortages for cars. Well, we're seeing the same issues for repair parts. So that is, we're working through that issue right at the moment.
And one other quick question on this CARES 2.0, we got down the teacher upgrades.
Yep.
How will that be handled? I mean, is we gonna go to 4 or 5 different vendors, models, give them to the teachers, let them try it? We buying the same old, how is that process?
Same old, basically. Apple laptops.
Apple Airs, I assume.
Yep. Yep. So, Apple's Apple. I mean, we can buy more memory, we can buy more hard drive, we can buy larger, but we'll be looking at basically a unit that's the same size, has more RAM, has more hard drive than what they currently have, and then it's going to be the Model T. You can pick any color you want as long as it's black.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Sounds like old.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Heartland update. Fundraising for the new building down there has topped $1 million. We're still not sure we're gonna be able to get it done for the amount of money budgeted with the different costs increase. We went through a process called Rfq Reference and Qualifications. We had 13 actually apply, but 3 of them, their package didn't arrive through the shipping companies on time, so we had to disallow them. We ended up going through 10 different architectural presentations, whittled it down to 3, and we've actually hired Garmin Miller, who is, I've actually been in a couple of the buildings that they've done. They do all kinds of school stuff, but one of their specialties is CTE building, so we're quite excited with that. And the other good news is the last number I heard, and the number will change as they get into their quotas and stuff, but we're looking at 800 kids for next year, which is the highest that they've ever had. So all this stuff coming from the state, CTE, pathways, work-based learning, it's like a forest fire with a 30-mile-an-hour wind coming behind it. It's just, I've never seen anything like it. So that's all I really have, unless anybody has any questions about Heartland. Mr. Hensley, legislative update?
So I actually spent a good hour in a meeting with Terry Spraden from ISBA, just talking about the current session, you know, the aggressiveness. So there's like 8 or 9 days left in this current session. And the legislators have been really aggressive on certain things. So there's, you know, the fact that now not only, you know, if we idle a building, not only can charter schools, you know, take that building, but also secondary education. So our community colleges, stuff like that. You know, the voucher program's been an intense discussion where the funding's going as far as the, you know, we've talked at a couple meetings, you know, about that. Probably one of the things that's a little concerning to me is the fact that there's actually legislation to take transportation and building maintenance and consolidate that to you know, individuals or private entities versus the schools, you know, taking that over. So as you look at what's going on here, you know, legislators are trying to push competition, or trying to put pressure on education and do the right things. How public education functions right now won't be the same as it functions in the future. And I think that's just the message here, and the fact that we need to look at education. Education is a business. I don't care who or what anybody wants to say. It's a big business. And we, you know, when we talk about these funds and stuff, you know, COVID's kind of been a windfall for us, right? I mean, when you think about where we were last year and where we're at now, looking at, you know, $700,000 or $800,000 coming in, $1 million next year, it's kind of a windfall. And one thing we better not do is build bad habits, you know, off this current period. You know, we still need to grow, and so it'll be interesting to see, you know, in the next 8 days, what legislation, you know, there's still a big push. You know, we've got supermajority, so basically, you know, the legislators, I mean, the people sitting on this board are at the behest of the legislators, right? They're the ones that allow school boards to still function. And so, you know, when we talk about some of these things, the big issue is how do we change our behavior? How do we become more competitive? How do we add, instead of worrying about, you know, the must-be's, you know, the core 40 basically, the more is better, extracurricular. You know, Robert kind of hit a key word earlier. How do we look at these delighters, right? How do we fund them? How do we really differentiate ourselves? Because I don't think, you know, as you look at this, we'll have whatever comes out of this year, there's going to be another legislative session, right? And so I don't think the pressure is going to go anywhere off of us as far as you know, what's coming at us and the competition from private schools. You've got universities, you know, Purdue's got several high schools that they operate currently. So, you know, sometimes when we're talking about some of these things, you know, it's not to bash the way we do things or the way, you know, the public education's behaved in the past. It's really, what do we really need to be looking at in the future to stay competitive? And really, my conversation with him is, it's just like the strategic plan. You know, we spent close to 2 years coming up with that strategic plan. There's other tools we use in the industry, like value stream mapping, and that was, you know, I gave basically Terry 3 points to look at, and that was one of them, is, you know, when I sat here, I look at the hoops that Becky's got to jump through, you know, some of the red tape. I'm listening to Dr. Lippy talk about the continuous improvement plan that the DOE, basically that format that they flushed to us, that we don't care for, that's got a defeating metric. Those are some of the things that we need to look at as a public institution, you know, this corporation. We need to start giving feedback and being more proactive and not just taking, you know, what they throw at us. We need to be looking at things and saying, how do we need to be doing these things right? What kind of suggestions can we give legislators to be, instead of being in this defensive mode, constantly trying to battle some of the legislation that's coming up, how can we become more proactive and start feeding some of that stuff to the state, you know, to head that off? So you know, keep abreast of the, you know, what's going on. ISBA puts out a pretty decent, you know, legislative update, but at some point I hope public education, you know, the ISBAs and institution and the legislators, we can, instead of having what seems to me to be some type of adversarial relationship, hopefully, you know, we're kind of all in it together like we are. So hopefully we can change things, you know, some things in public education to put more forethought to what we want to do in the future and things like that. So that's the legislative update. Thank you.
Hearing of patrons.
I'm April White. I just had a point of clarification. The CARES 2.0 dollars. I feel like we got stuck on the $80,000 for the guidance counselor position, and I am curious if, I think the other positions listed were not full-time, so they were just at face value, kind of salary amount or dollar amount, but that position is full-time, and so I assume that includes the benefits package as well. The $80,000 would not be a salary figure, but would be the salary plus benefits. So I get like my annual statement from work, and that figure is nice, but it is not what I bring home. And it is quite a bit more than what my paycheck is. So I feel like we got stuck on the $80,000, and it seemed as though perhaps we thought that was the salary amount for the position, but my guess is it's the salary plus that benefits package.
Yes, that is correct. We tried to include some benefits and mid-range salary.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you for clarifying that. That actually helps me too, so thank you.
Anybody else? Superintendent's not here. Jeremy, did you have anything you wanted to add? School board comments? I'm gonna make just one, in reference to Mr. Hensley's comment about the strategic plan. There's been an awful lot of time and work put into this, and going forward with everything that we looked at 2 years ago and what's happened in Indianapolis since then, a lot of that has changed. So I'm just gonna ask for a little bit of grace and patience here, because not only has that picture changed, the world that we live in after COVID has changed, and we have to be very, very careful. You know, declining enrollment hasn't changed. you know, the tax caps and things that we're gonna start to run into. So we're just gonna have to take our time here and work through this process. So just asking for a little bit of grace and patience as we work through this, because we don't want to handcuff the people that are going to sit in these seats and in those seats in the future. So we just got to be real careful. Anybody else? At this time I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Brubaker?
So moved.
Mr.
Second.
Bucher? All in favor? We are adjourned.